55 deaths on one side, so there are Venezuelans and certainly some Cubans too, since Cubans were surrounding Maduro's guards, so those 55 deaths. We'll especially look at the before and after images of this Fuerte Tuna complex where they were. It shows that it's an operation, so it's surgical. That's one point of view, but it's relative. There was still a very strong show of force.
Sure, so they destroyed all of Venezuela's air defenses, causing all the radars to stop working. All potential launchers and advanced systems delivered by Russia until 2018. So, in Ukraine, it was considered that the air defense was not up to par, but against the United States, indeed, it was completely useless.
Its intervention power remains fascinating. The coup plotter's handbook always said to seize television, destroy radars, and cause some destruction. It's essentially a coup from the outside, and it's tailor-made.
The country is blind. Now they have no working radars. If the Americans want another air raid tomorrow, they wouldn't even need to send bombers. This time, it'll be a free-for-all. The real question is, what can they do? Why were there so few deaths? 55 deaths to destroy Venezuela's entire air defense isn't a large number. There could have been hundreds of strikes on hundreds of sites. All the ammunition depots, all the radars, all the defense systems, all the ammunition stocks, all the military accommodations. They could have actually destroyed hundreds of sites and killed thousands and thousands of people. They did the bare minimum to ensure a safe assault, and unfortunately there were a few dozen Venezuelans in the area, but the reality is that they didn't need to do more.
I don't know if we can review the images in 3 dimensions, but we can see how the complex was built. The helicopter descent operation, can you explain to us the moment when by helicopter they managed to get inside this very base?
Based on the images, there was an airborne assault using large cargo helicopter, 47 helicopters each, able to carry around 40 fully equipped commandos. They landed on the roof, they rappelled down, and they entered through the windows. They had very, very precise knowledge of where each guard would be, even though it was a highly protected environment. There are watchtowers, there are perimeter walls, and all of this is done with rappelling and descending directly from the roofs. It happened so fast that Maduro couldn't even leave his room for his bunker-like safe room.
The other image, as you can see, is actually generated by artificial intelligence. He's at the entrance to his panic room, as they say, and he's caught just before entering. In any case, that's the American version.
The American version, but he can't close his door in time. The Americans intercepted him quickly, so this was definitely an operation. It took under 5 minutes, but helicopters are loud. His quick wake-up and trip downstairs suggests no operational alert system existed.
How do you achieve that technical skill following the official version? 10 p.m., the bombings, 10:01 p.m., the helicopters are in action on the base for 1 minute.
It's certainly that the bombings on the closest defense sites, certainly the advanced sites between the sea and the capital, had been destroyed a few minutes earlier, and certainly that they were destroyed. As the helicopters advanced, this gradually blinded them. There were still 10-15 minutes of flying over Venezuelan territory without an alert reaching the presidential level, suggesting the communication networks, including phones, likely stopped working. And we can remember what happened, for example, during the war in the time of Serbia, when the Americans used graphite bombs that created sparks. False contacts in the power lines were present, and they definitely used systems to disable several electronic devices.
Your heart aches because you are an old, if I may say, an old French Gaullist sovereigntist. All of this must really get you down.
But as for me, I believe we should respect international law with those who respect it. What about Maduro, who shouldn't hold that position and is no longer recognized as president by the European Union? Because his successor, who won the elections, had to be exfiltrated to Spain? Russia is violating Ukrainian territory, yet we stop ourselves from seizing their assets. We must restore parity when a country ignores international law. I don't see why we should keep respecting the treaties.
Is this challenging the Russians and Chinese? Exit, the American Secretary of War, is mocking the Russians, saying, "That's your ally, you should have protected them." Where were the Russian systems?
3 nights ago, in downtown Caracas, Venezuela, nearly 200 of our greatest Americans went to downtown Caracas. It seems that the Russian air defenses didn't work very well, did they, in downtown Caracas? To capture an individual wanted by American justice without a single American casualty.
Is it actually in part a blow against the Russians?
Very clearly and certainly allowed by Ukraine. I remind you that in 2022, the Ukrainians managed to capture about 10 latest generation Russian radars, Pantsir systems, Russian Buk M3S, the very latest generation. All of that, there's no doubt, it has been analyzed and reverse engineering has been done, and that allows the American jamming system to work without even destroying the radar. They have specialized planes called the EAD-18. This is a plane that will send out waves that match the frequency, the return of what the radar expects, the Russian radar. It emits a wave and detects expected signals, but if jammed by a similar wave, it becomes completely blind. And so it's very likely that indeed the Russian systems are not up to what was expected. We see it every time they are used in Ukraine, in Russia, in Syria, and now in Venezuela. Well, of course, this American power against the Russians, it has increased even more by recovering and analyzing the equipment that was lost in Russia.
The Russians, partly ridiculed.
The Chinese. But the reality is that Maduro was trying to reassure two countries, Russia and China. He hoped to be protected by these two countries. And just like Syria, Libya, and tomorrow Iran, Venezuela was not defended by its allies. And that's on the international level. It's true that Russia continues to lose ground, and obviously that contributes to its weakness.
Does this confirm deep down what has been true throughout the Cold War, that the best defenders of the Western Bloc are in fact still the United States?
The United States is the only country with nearly unlimited resources, giving it unmatched international capacity for action.
So,
if the United States decided to support Ukraine against Russia tomorrow, Russia obviously wouldn't participate.
a lot of weapons, a lot of aid, a lot of training.
It's about what percentage of what they're giving compared to what they could potentially give. How many hundreds of helicopters, drones, jets, and tanks could they send Ukraine annually? That would make a real difference. So they're just giving the minimum possible so that the Ukrainians can hold out and wear down Russia, but never to win.
We're in a moment of Trump being pleased. There's this language where he says the Colombian president should watch his ass. You can sense a kind of soldier-like jubilation from where he is. Listen to the way he says it, he claims it, and you just said he's right to do so. The best army in the world?
The United States has proven once again that we have the most powerful, the deadliest, the most sophisticated, and the most formidable army on planet Earth. And by far, I've said for a long time, no one can beat us or could have done this. No one has our weapons, no one has the quality of our weapons.
Nobody has our weapons, nobody has the quality of our weapons.
That's not entirely true. You can have quality, but lack volume and quantity. We also don't have dozens of helicopter carriers to position off Caracas. Our weapons sometimes surpass American ones in quality, even in fighter jets, helicopters, ships, missiles, and air defense. Their numbers are significant and their technology is advanced, but sometimes we beat them by just a few percentage points. They can deploy hundreds of thousands of men and are the only ones able to do so. On the other hand, if tomorrow we had to face the United States, it's true that we wouldn't be able to properly protect Greenland, but would we hurt them? The answer is yes, 1,000 times yes. Today we have missiles that have a longer range than theirs, and we have radars that are capable of detecting their stealth aircraft.
Even if Europeans fire on American troops.
I certainly hope that we will assert our sovereignty over Denmark, provided that the Danes and the Greenlanders request it. If we're on the ground and the Americans attack, we must show our presence.
How is that credible? Even when Trump threatened them, the Danes kept buying F-35s, so they were still appeasing the Americans despite being mistreated. So when you're at that level of submission, it's not even a real state anymore. There's a kind of servility that's really, really low.
Yes, it's a form of submission, but the Danes accept it. I hope all these countries will gradually reject the Americans by cancelling any remaining contracts. Legally, knowing Americans don't mind us cancelling contracts with Australia, our submarines, etc. Espionage, betrayal. The Americans have always done this, and now we must follow their bad practices.
It's not double talk. The Danish case is interesting. In fact, they really behaved almost like traitors to Europe. Remember, in 2021, they helped the American National Security Agency listen in on Merkel and Macron. So it's really a lackey's behavior, a traitor's behavior. In reality, when you're at that level, it means everything else doesn't matter much.
What this really shows is that even by being as subservient as possible, you don't become a friend of the United States, just a lackey to be used, including even facing territorial threats. So That's why it's important today for these countries that made this mistake, if they could open their eyes and realize it. Well, sometimes the Danes, they can't necessarily cancel the F-35, but on the other hand, they cancel the contract to buy Franco-Italian air defense.
Absurdly, it doesn't prove the Americans right. As someone living in Europe, seeing that makes you feel safer, with a Greenland that would be in the hands of American aggressiveness rather than in the hands of people who are capable of giving in, at that point...
Until now, that's how it's been. Now, other European countries need to align with France's long-held position. General de Gaulle said there must be true European sovereignty. At the national level, it's French if possible, European if necessary, and we really coordinate. And yes, we need to cancel the contracts to buy patrol planes.
It's the Danes. What are you going to tell them? Why aren't they following your good advice?
The Portuguese dropped plans to buy the F-35 and will likely choose the Rafale. Spain also cancelled their F-35 contract.
When Emmanuel Macron says he can't imagine the Americans violating Danish sovereignty, the status of Greenland is that of a territory associated with the European Union. It's a bit unusual, but it's still Denmark. How does Trump make fun of this mix of ambition and weakness?
We need Greenland for our national security, and Denmark is not able to provide it. Do you know what the Danes did to strengthen security in Greenland? They added sled dogs. That's the truth, and they thought it was a good idea.
When he asks about Greenland's resources, let's discuss the details since you're familiar with the military aspects. There is this very important base in Denmark, the Thule base. Now they've renamed it with the Inuit name Pitufik. If the Americans leave their base and plant their flag somewhere else, what happens?
Not much happens, but actually it's simply because we don't have resources on site. Denmark has very, very few resources. Also, because once again, it's like Japan, the Americans forbade the Japanese from developing a proper army. Today we're in a similar situation, but economic pressure forced us to buy their equipment. Now the Danes must strengthen themselves and continue training. France does exercises in Greenland every year, we shouldn't forget that. We have men deployed there, we have mountain troops who are among the best and most experienced in the world. We know how to dig in, we know how to hold out for a long time. We have equipment that could make things tough for the Americans, but to be honest, we don't have the ability to withstand a real military clash with the United States. We shouldn't kid ourselves, but that's not a reason to give up maintaining a presence and power there.
The stakes are very, very high, meaning that all along the Russian coast, the Federation of Russia, there are some very important bases. Russian nuclear submarines and missile launchers 501 are moving.
So the Russians now have no other choice but to go through the north to reach the Atlantic Ocean. So naturally there is a route. It's from Iceland, Scotland and Greenland, where historically their planes and submarines used to pass through. We used to make clouds, barriers of buoys. That was my job when I was in the Navy. We drop buoys, listen, and when we detect a sound from a buoy, we start tracking that submarine and others that way. The Americans tracked them in Iceland and Greenland, then the British, French and Spanish, passing them along in turn, the Soviet, then Russian submarines, to be able to track them almost everywhere. And if today it works well, it's actually because there's cooperation with the United States. The United States never had to own Greenland to have bases there or coordinate activities.
They reply that they want to drill their own way, without European standards or restrictions. They tell you they want to be able to access the minerals as they want, and they tell you the minerals will be more useful. For both American aggression and the Danes we mentioned, who are already sold out,
the French, like Thales, use radars that need gallium nitrides. We could exploit that as well. Do Denmark and Greenland's people want their land exploited? No, for ecological reasons, which I believe we should support.
For now, because there are some. Jeff Landry, who is Trump's envoy for Greenland, already has his own idea. Trump supports an independent Greenland. He's a friend of the Inuits or the descendants of the Inuits. Supposedly, we don't need to seize Greenland by force. We'll get it through trade. Basically, they're going to write checks, and they claim they can write huge checks for the few tens of thousands of Greenland's inhabitants who will in fact be partly bought. All in all, that's the plan.
If Greenland's people are corruptible, why not? Good for them. If they want to sell themselves to the highest bidder, let them do it. That's the individual freedom of the people of Greenland. But if tomorrow they refuse, wanting to remain European, keep their resources and preserve their quality of life, if they don't want their environment to be destroyed by the construction of a polluting industrial site, they also have the choice, they have the possibility to express it. The last elections, after the first emissaries of Trump came, the only party that was in favor of American annexation, its scores were so low that it's the only one not in the Greenland Assembly. I'm no expert, but that still says something.
In the destiny of nations, you are a sovereigntist. Does everything we're seeing here reinforce your belief that the nation remains the real framework?
The Association of Nations, that's why even before the Ukraine war, I advocated for something like NATO, by getting rid of the United States, which would not be associated with the European Union, but for example, the British could be associated with some kind of defense.
Let me remind you that theoretically there is this thing called the European Union, which is already an association of nations. You are aware of that?
Of course.
But it should work.
The European Union is now a cumbersome, complex administrative structure that excludes several countries. Norway, Switzerland and Great Britain could take part in the defense of the European continent as a geopolitical entity that has the capacity for power.
The question:
it's about power, since we lack ambition to be powerful at the European level.
What is stopping us?
Our decision-making is weakened by having to find the lowest common denominator among many countries. Let's be honest. If France chooses to be in Ukraine and intercept Ukrainian missiles, who would follow me? That's what showing leadership means. Powerful countries like France, Germany and Great Britain can enforce power policies when they choose to, but we lack such a policy.
See questioning Europe. What's the point of Europe if we just pick and choose projects asking who's with us for each one? That's Europe.
Well, Europe also has this possibility of having the euro only for the countries that want to do it, so there are a number of countries that can.
It's final, not based on current events.
I think we can really have a security association, just like NATO is a security association that exists outside the European Union. I really think we need to have this strategic perspective. By saying to ourselves, in 2040 we will have a European security entity that is unique and above all sovereign, without depending on the Americans. We don't need anything coming from the United States, and we could also have joint fleets. When we make radar planes today, when we have a fleet of A400M strategic transport planes together, when we have water bomber planes together, well, why don't we extend that to some other needs as well? Today, are we moving towards cooperation with Antonov, the large Ukrainian planes, to be able to do strategic transport aviation? Well, that's it. In my opinion, it's also the European Union's mission to be able to connect Ukraine to industrial projects that will go beyond this ceasefire, to be able to have a truly powerful Europe.
The Russians are clearly involved. They even retweeted Trump's image. Do you think there could be a possible rift between the Russians and them for the first time?
So, on the subject of Greenland, the Russians absolutely want to support the American claims on Greenland, because they think that, on the other hand, there will be a symmetry that will make the Americans see or consider that it's not too serious. The Baltic countries could be attacked from one side while Greenland is targeted from the other, allowing coordination between both. And we must not forget China, with Taiwan or with the Paracel and Spratly Islands, that is the South China Sea. Because if there is a conflict that is synchronized by Russia towards Greenland and towards China, towards Taiwan, at that point, where will the American preference go? The United States will assist its allies in Taiwan, redirecting F-35 spare parts and other resources from Europe to Asia. And that's where the threat of a triple pincer movement for Europe comes from.
Are we witnessing a form of American hubris? Listen to Donald Trump. There are a lot of statements from Donald Trump tonight, and he's mocking everyone in every direction. He says he wants to overthrow the Cubans and Colombia. According to the Jerusalem Post, Iran might be next, and he's especially targeting France. He's being sarcastic. There was a friendly exchange, and Emmanuel Macron was quite lenient. It seems the favor might now be returned. Do you think there's some kind of agreement, how should I say, an exchange of favors? France was lenient. Guarantees about Maduro?
It's very clear that we can't afford to get on bad terms with the Americans, since we haven't yet made the industrial efforts to build up our strength. So, while we're waiting to be able to get rid of the Americans, we shouldn't get on Trump's bad side. And his personality means that, once again, it's a personal game. And President Macron has to tweet to say, yes, it's actually not bad. We'll be able to show that we're involved.
So, should we count on Trump actually being grateful? You know, that's always a bit up for debate. In reality, are we already colonized by the Americans?
Yes, and we need to de-dollarize. We need to make sure we can remove the extraterritoriality of the dollar, which means today we should stop using the dollar. When I see companies like Airbus, which today use American infrastructures like Google for their emails, fortunately we're realizing after years of mistakes that our administration should be replaced. So, to be able to be sovereign, we have to get rid of our addiction to the American system. That means we'll probably pay more for equipment that will be less good. But there comes a time when you also have to make choices.
There are a few figures like that, Reagan, Thatcher at certain times, who embodied a kind of Western self-assured authority. Do you think that's something that could come back?
They also embodied power in international relations, which is the combination of potential and action. We have great potential, brilliant minds and military capabilities, but we don't take action or allow ourselves a strategic vision or sense of power. That's truly a problem today, and we need to eliminate it.
Can American and European power unite? That's clearly what you want.